Is y equals secant of x plus pi fourths, and we're sketching at least one cycle of the graph and determining the period, asymptotes, and range. Okay, so let's see. It looks like the period doesn't change because there's no number right in here. That's what changes the period, and there's none of that. So the period will stay the same at 2 pi. So on my graph paper, I'm going to just choose this basic graph that goes to 2 pi for my graphing purposes. It will work. So y equals secant x plus pi over 4 is what we're graphing. So I recommended last time that to graph these, you actually start with y equals cosine x plus pi fourths first, and then you just flip it. Okay, so ignore the fact that we're doing secant for a minute and go back to what you learned in section 2.1 and 2.2 and graph this. So you're going to go to the left pi fourths, correct? So cosine normally looks like, I'm going to put in my key points so I can put in what cosine normally looks like. So there's one cycle of the cosine graph and what it normally looks like. However, we're doing a pi fourths phase shift to the left. So we're going to take each of those points and move them to the left by pi fourths, which is halfway between each of these tick marks because they each are a pi halves difference. So pi fourths is half of that. So this point here will move there, and 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 this point here will move there. That's what I've found with these graphing, is that even though they get confusing, if you stick with your 5 key points, that really helps. Okay, so our actual cosine graph after it's been phase shifted is there instead. But that's not actually what we're graphing. We are graphing secant. So now we take the cosine graph and flip it the other direction. But before you do that, go through and mark your asymptotes at each of the x-intercepts. So there's an x-intercept right there, so I'm going to put an asymptote right there. There's an x-intercept here, so I'm going to put an asymptote there. And then I look at the curve of the cosine graph, and I flip it the other direction using those asymptotes. If I want, I could throw another asymptote right in here. Okay. So the secant graph will be here, here. If you want to keep going, there's another piece there. Okay, now let's answer the pertinent questions. The question said, determine the period. So period is 2 pi because there was no number in front of the x right here to change that. Okay, asymptotes. The asymptotes, basically find the first asymptote